Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Going Virtual, Strategies for Program Sustainability. This is Jackie Catcherbone from Strategy Solutions, and I will be your host moderator today. Deb and Erica will be your presenters. So this is the third in our series of 4 webinars entitled Planning Through Crisis webinar. It is our intent to give everyone the recordings and the slides from all 4. So if you were unable to attend any of them, we'll make sure you have access to all the recordings and the recorded content as well. During today's presentation, we do have all of our participants muted. So if you need to ask a question or discuss something with one of the panelists, please use the question and answer or chat feature. Our presentation today should last about 30 minutes, and it is our hope to get through all of your questions at the end. If we are unable to do so, please feel free to stay on, or we'll make sure that we get that information out to you afterwards. So with that, I will turn it over to Deb to share your objectives for today's session.
Okay, good morning. I am delighted to have the opportunity to be with you today and to talk about a little bit about the current environment and how it's impacting the nonprofit sector. And specifically, we're going to be identifying opportunities despite the current challenges that exist in our world today. We also hope to challenge your assumptions and help you think virtually about your programs and services, as well as the tools that are available to support virtual programming and help you identify some next steps to develop a virtual program plan for your organization. As Jackie said, I'm Deb Thompson. I'm the founder and CEO of Strategy Solutions. I have a long history of working with organizations in strategic and program planning and development, as well as evaluation. Over my career, I've probably worked with over 200 organizations, helping them figure out how to be sustainable and to develop programs and services that meet the outcomes that they want to achieve. And I'm delighted to have one of our new consultants, Erica Berlin, with us today, who brings a great background in educational technology and program development to our team.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today as well to talk about your virtual program development. I do have a lot of experience in communications, ed tech, product and program development in nonprofit, startup, and corporate environments. Most recently, I was the Vice President of Technology at Larson Tech, a math textbook and online learning company. I come to the work with my clients with the framework of design thinking, and you'll see some of that later on, and web and mobile development. I've worked most recently with larger companies that have compliance and accessibility requirements, but I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you. We also have our other experienced leaders that have been part of our webinar series available for questions and consultation after these events. That includes Jackie Catcherbone, our Director of Nonprofit and Community Services, John Papalea, who is one of our senior consultants, and Margie Taylor, who is also one of our senior consultants and an expert in fundraising and fund development. A little bit about Strategy Solutions. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we actually do strategic planning, program development, research, and organizational development services across sectors in order to help meet our mission of creating healthier communities. I've heard a lot of people talk about getting back to business as usual, or getting back to some sense of normalcy after this crisis is over. And I think about what's really going on, and the reality is that the world has changed. We will not go back to what life was like in February of 2000. And I've been thinking a lot over the last few weeks about Bob Amara, who was a futurist and former CEO of Institute for the Future. And Bob used to always talk about the fact that we have a tendency to overestimate the impact of phenomena in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. And while everyone is sort of caught up in this current crisis and trying to figure out how to respond to it right now, what we really need to be thinking about is how is this experience going to be shaping our world in a important way moving forward, because it will. You know, we have this current crisis, but we also have to be thinking about how is it going to be impacting all of us in the work that we do moving forward. Strategy Solutions, as we do planning with our clients, we always talk about how any type of program planning or strategic planning really needs to be in the context of industry, product, and organizational life cycles. And even though we're now in a crisis mode, we really have to be thinking about how what is happening fits into the overall trend. And before the crisis happened, we had increasing issues with limited resources and demands on nonprofits. And this study by the National Finance Fund actually was published in 2019 that really shows the tenuous situation that many nonprofit organizations are in. This study that was published by Forbes at the beginning of the year, looking at the top 12 nonprofit trends, we have highlighted on this slide the 7 that are related to technology, which tells us that even before the crisis, where we've all seemed to need to think virtually because we're separated and suffering from social isolation now, there is a really important focus on moving to technology and the role that it will play in shaping our lives now and in the future. And a couple of things I want to highlight about this is that it's important to have networks where people work together, and it's also important for nonprofits to be thinking about what are the earned income opportunities that we can create in order to sustain our missions. I love this picture on this slide because it really depicts the fact that we can't continue to do what we've always done and expect a different result. And the truth is right now, if we want our organizations to be sustainable, we really have to rethink how we deliver programs and services and be in a situation where we're prepared to go viral whenever necessary in the future, because people are forecasting that this pandemic that we have is likely to happen again. Now, in the very short run, going virtually could be as easy as using Zoom or other web-based communications technology, and many of us are doing that today. However, over the long run, it's a bit more complicated than that and requires a little bit of additional thinking and investment, but it's worth the time and energy for you to really think through it. So we have 3 steps we're talking about today. Step 1, to revisit your logic model and your desired outcomes and impacts of your programs. You always want to start with mission. Step 2 is to analyze the program work process flow and update for virtual delivery. And step 3 is to utilize technology tools and resources to support that virtual programming. So as we get started with thinking about how to go virtual, the first question we want to ask ourselves is, what's the outcomes and impact that we're trying to accomplish with our clients or with our programs? Are we trying to change some condition? Are we trying to impact attitudes or behavior? Are we trying to get people to do something differently? What are those activities that we do to support that work? It's really important to look at the goals for your program, because successfully using Zoom to have a virtual meeting with clients is not a program outcome. It's really important for you to think about, well, what's possible? What's been sitting on the shelf? What are the ideas that we might want to have to work with or focus on the programs that we have, or the elements of the programs that we could do? At this point, it's really important for you to experiment with what's called a minimal viable project, a product or pilot, because you've got to really err on the side of action. You know, sitting around and thinking about it for a long time right now is not a good idea. And you can start with some free and low cost tools that Erica is going to start to explain and then validate the program idea later. Getting started quickly is the thing to think about.
That's right. So when you're trying to get to that minimum viable product, which I love that term because it comes from technology development, and it really means that you're figuring out how to achieve your program outcomes with the simplest solution that affects the most clients that you have. You know, you want it to be something that that can affect most people that use your programming. So how do you do that? Well, you need to analyze your workflow, and you need to start thinking about it in terms of virtual program development. And the first thing you always do is think about your client experience. What do you want your client experience to be? What is it now? And what could it be in a virtual environment? You need to document all those process steps so that when you get to the point of thinking about it virtually, you don't forget anything important. You need to determine what are the policy barriers or approvals that need to be done to support this process. And there are a few things to consider here, but in healthcare, you have a number of them. You also have to think about compliance when it comes to anyone under the age of 12 or anyone who has a disability. So there's a lot of virtual things that need to be, you have to think about a lot of those policy barriers that you have to account for, especially when you're being held accountable to certain policies. You need to create that new work process flow. How is your program going to work? What are you going to do? How do you get from program implementation to seeing the success of your program outcome? Training your staff is really important, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then, of course, you have to develop the program and roll out the communication plan to your client. So here's a tip. Your workflow analysis begins and ends with your client, right? So always include your clients or client advocates in your workflow analysis. You're going to get a lot of benefit from hearing from your clients throughout the process. So some sample program goal and delivery methods. These are some high-level potential program outcomes or goals of your program. Do you provide education or training? You probably do that through lectures or employee skill development and training. You collect data, you do opinion polls, you crowdsource, you facilitate discussion groups, so you do subject-specific group discussions, book clubs, art exhibition or historical centers, you do gallery openings, you do tours, and you provide direct services. So those are all things that you could potentially be working on, and those are just the ones we're going to think about in this presentation. When you start thinking about what your virtual program is going to look like, you have to be practical. You have to start with a basic understanding of the resources that you and your audience have. What is your IT infrastructure and support? You know, this can make or break your program. How will you provide technical support to both your staff and to your clients? You know, what software and hardware is needed? What does your staff currently use? What are they comfortable with? You know, if you have a huge learning curve, you may not see the kind of program effectiveness that you're looking for. So start small. Resist the urge to implement something new or cutting edge until you can validate your client capabilities. Do an inventory of your current program materials. Think about what needs to be revised for the virtual environment. If you're delivering materials online, you might have to do them a different way. You might have to create multimedia. And then you have to think about, what is your backup if technology fails? If you have a virtual program that you need to deliver, what happens if the Wi-Fi goes down? What happens if you don't have the right kind of hardware? You have to have the backup. Make sure you do, because when the tech fails, you need to be ready. The other thing to think about is, what are some of the cultural norms around technology? You have to think about the environment that your clients currently live and work in. What are the social norms for interacting online? Setting expectations is really, really important to creating an environment that is healthy for both your staff and for your clients. But you have to allow new social norms to develop, and you have to provide space for social connection. Okay, so now you're into step 3. You're ready to start utilizing the technology. You're ready to just dive in, right? This doesn't have to be intimidating. There's a design thinking principle to have a bias towards action, and all that means is that you just keep moving forward. You don't have to be an expert. If you hit a roadblock where your client doesn't use the technology you want to try, or you don't have, the budget to do what you want, just keep moving forward. You're going to find the right solution. So when you're choosing your technology, it really takes doing research. And some of this is maybe you have a staff person who can do this research, or maybe it's you. But think about what best facilitates your program goals. That is the number one question that you have to ask. What is the outcome that you're looking for, and how does the technology get you to that outcome? Because there's all kinds of stuff out there that's very cool, but the program success still depends on the human leadership. It depends on your staff's comfort and your staff's efficacy in using it and doing the virtual program to get the outcome that you're looking for. Another point to think about here is that if you're part of a larger national organization, or you have a partnership or association in your industry, go to that organization. There may be technology available to you through that organization at a lower cost. You might get group rates, or you might have other organizations that do what you do in your industry providing guidance to you. We tried this worked, this didn't work. There's a lot of knowledge out there that you can tap into. And I think that speaks to what Deb said before about nonprofit networking groups. If you're talking to people within, this is a research. So Simple Tech Solutions, we talked through some of those programs before. There are really, really simple solutions out there to start incorporating technology right away. I'm going to go into more detail on a learning management system in a minute, but if you're doing education or training, an LMS is a great opportunity, but you can hop on to webinars, you can talk to people face-to-face, you can do one-to-many or one-on-one education and training programs very, very easily. It's ubiquitous to have Wi-Fi. Most people have a camera or at least an audio conferencing service. So you've got great options there. If you're collecting data, technology is built for this, right? You can promote surveys. You can use Google Forms even as a very, very simple way to collect information. You can do polls. You can tap into your networking groups and existing social networks. If you're facilitating discussion groups, you can use messaging apps, discussion forums. That's a really, really deep pool of knowledge and information. Discussion forums, particularly in your industry, you can get a lot of information, but you can bring a lot of people together, and that can be as simple as a Facebook group, or it can be an industry-specific discussion forum. For art exhibition or history, virtual tours are very, very cool, and they are not that expensive and not that difficult to do. And it could be as simple as one of your facilitators walking around a gallery and talking about what you're looking at. You can also do interactive maps. Again, a free tool with Google. You can plot an interactive map and send your participant on a tour on their own. With direct service, again, video, audio, or text messaging apps are great for this. And I think we all see this in our day-to-day lives. There's commercials for it everywhere. You may hear from your healthcare provider, different telehealth services are out there. So there's a lot of great services that exist. All you have to do is do the research and, again, find the one that works for you and gets you to the program outcome that you're looking for. So if you're in education and training, a really, really a tool that's being used by so many organizations in nonprofit and corporate environments, in schools and education, are learning management systems. And a learning management system is a great tool to keep all of your information, your training materials in one place, to track your users who are accessing that material, to give them a chance to move through at their own pace, to automate the information as it's coming toward them, to personalize their experience, to make their learning social within a closed group, and to track what they're doing by looking at data and analytics and seeing if your training materials are actually making a difference. Are they achieving the program outcomes that you're looking for? And a lot of this is available within a learning management system. And learning management systems can be free, or they could be, you know, usually like a licensing fee. But you really have to think about, what are your needs as an organization? Are you serving the general public? Are you serving a small internal staff, or somewhere in between? Do you have compliance issues that you have to consider? Do you have accessibility issues that you have to consider with an audience that has limitations? What is your budget? And are you thinking about a software that is going to grow with you? One of the things that I said before is creating a minimum viable product is really important, because you need to test out what are the activities that need to be done to achieve your program outcome. It may not be that final technology solution, but you'll learn in your experimentation phase what are the key technology features that you need, so that you can plan for the growth of your product in the future. And I have a few recommendations here to check out different versions of learning management systems. Some of them are free, some of them are not. If you go for a free option, you need to make sure you have a strong sense of tech in your organization, because it will rely heavily on your internal IT staff. So you really have to kind of judge where are your capabilities as an organization and make the decision that works for you, because 24/7 tech support is very important when you're using any virtual program, both for you, for your staff that is responsible for the success of achieving your program outcomes, but also your clients who might be trying to access virtual programming on their own and don't have access to the staff person. So they need to be able to call tech support so they can achieve what they need to achieve. Okay, so what did we learn? What are the conclusions here? Well, I think it's important to think virtual programming it's a must. You have to think virtually, because on a 24-hour notice, which, you know, I know of a local company that had a day and a half from the time they were told they were going to be working remotely till the time they were at home working remotely, and they had no guidance. So things can happen on a turn, and you have to be prepared for that. Like Deb said in the beginning, we are not going back to February 2020. Our future is forever changed. And you have to have a program, no matter what it is, you have to have a program that can flow easily from in person, if you will, analog, so to speak, to digital. It has to be able to flow back and forth, and you have to have a plan to achieve your program outcomes, both in the quote-unquote real world and in the virtual world. But you can't wait. You have to do it now. Because right now, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we're all thinking about what the future might be. It's a great time to be dedicating your time and energy to this. And have that bias towards action. Move forward. Just do it. The other thing is building empathy for your clients. I spoke before about, what do you want that experience of your client to be? Well, talk to them. Find out. Hear what their needs are. You're thinking about things in terms of, how do you turn this program into something virtual? But sometimes a virtual solution that you think is going to work out great, it actually won't work for your client for whatever reason, but you need to hear from them. And that's the great thing about experimenting and trying out different ideas and doing low cost or free pilots just to try things out, because that's how you're going to suss out the real features that you need to deliver your program digitally and to achieve the program outcomes that you're accountable for. The other thing is, you have to think about, what is it doing all the time? Technology doesn't just run in the background. We already talked about your IT infrastructure, very important. But your staff needs to continually be trained about what's coming out, because any service that you use, any technology that you use, It's always going to be updated. There's always going to be new features to try out. So keeping your staff up to date is really important. And making sure that your clients know that you're always committed to hearing from them. Is this working for you? Tell us what you think. We can adjust based on what you need, you know, and there is a learning curve for everyone when you're starting to do a new program. And we're all going to be adapting to this new world of doing things virtually that we used to not. And so we're all in this boat together. We hear this all the time, that we're all in this together, and it's true. So you get that leeway of working with your clients and not necessarily just implementing something without their input. Go to them. Your success is based on hearing from your clients and making sure that you and your staff are completely equipped to be successful at what they're doing. Building your internal capacity, you need to have your internal expert. You know, whoever that is the go-to before everyone learns. But the humans behind the program, again, are what get you to your program success. They will get you to your program outcomes that you're looking to do. And you know what that is? It's, you know, raising test scores by 2%. You know, I'll use an example from education. But I think that is probably one of the areas that we learn so much. We're all hearing right now, anyone who's a parent, you're dealing with kids that are home having to be educated by their parents online. And a lot of schools and districts have been caught with no solution. They have been scrambling to figure out how to get their kids online. And we don't ever want that to happen again. In education, in any environment, in any program that you're implementing, you have to be prepared to go virtual and stay there and be able to move back and forth between the real world and the digital world.
Thank you so much.
That's about it from me.
Thank you both so much. So just as a reminder, questions can be thrown up in the question and answer or the chat function. So I did have a couple for you, Deb and Erica. So what advice do you have for someone to even begin to think about how they could go virtual with one of their programs? Kind of practical, tactical, couple of steps to think about.
Yeah, I think that one of the best ways to get started is for you to do that mental inventory of your programs and what your program outcomes currently are. And then while you're looking at that, start with a survey. Survey your current staff. Survey your current clients. You can send out an email with a link to a survey. You can make phone calls. You can do interviews. You can have group discussions on Zoom if you want. But you need to have those conversations with the people that you'll be serving. So that is the place to start. Pick up the phone and call somebody, or send an email and start a conversation. That is how you start.
Thank you. So some programs lend themselves easier to going virtual, or, you know, you could understand how you could get there from here. So say you have an organization that's running, you know, like a youth basketball program. What advice would you have to help them even begin to think about how you take something so physical and put it into a virtual world?
That's a really great question. And I think it's $1 million question that a lot of people are facing right now. You cannot have kids playing basketball in one room together virtually. It's not happening yet. Maybe in virtual reality, maybe in gaming and virtual reality, that is in the future, but that's not really realistic for most programs here in our area. So what do? Well, this is where you have to start thinking creatively. You may not be able to get kids together to play games, but how can you help them with the skills that they're learning through the basketball program? They're learning about teamwork. They're learning about, you know, different techniques, dribbling, passing, making plays. There's information and there's skills that can be developed that can be done virtually. You can have video tutorials from coaches. You can have team meetings. You can talk about you can ask questions about skills that you're struggling with and record yourself and get feedback from your teammates. You could take the time to put together a virtual scheduling system so that when you do pick up games again, you have a better communication channel between the players and their coaches, or the coaches and their parents. So that's how you do it. I mean, again, you think about those program outcomes. What are the goals of a youth, let's say, youth basketball program? Well, yes, it's for students to get exercise. So how do you meet that goal? You give them workouts to do at home that they can do on their own. To develop skills, you give them videos and you provide them with resources that can help build those skills. And you have them, build relationships and work as a team. And there are lots of ways to socially connect online. So it's just creative thinking. It's thinking about the outcomes that you're looking for and the other ways that you can achieve those outcomes.
Thanks, Erica. That was very helpful. And then just one final question. Where can someone go to find more information about some of these tech solutions that are out there?
Well, really, I would say to any organization to start with the industry that you're in, because that's where the thinking is happening by people all across the country and across the world. If you work in, disability services, go to those organizations, those national organizations, and find out what their recommendations are. There are a lot of people already thinking about this you may not even realize. So go to those organizations and do research there to see what some of the thinking is. I would start there. There's a lot of support in the ed tech industry, lots of different resources. Ed tech industry actually is one of them that I turn to a lot. So it really, like I said, it really depends on your industry. I would start there.
Great, thank you. And so just as we wrap up today, I do want to reiterate that we have been doing these free webinars, and you will get the recording to this one, as well as the slides, as well as the information from all of the 4 total that are in this series, Planning for a Crisis. In addition to that, if there's something that you feel you need some additional support or a question you didn't have a chance to ask, we're also here to do a free 30-minute consultative support chat. So earlier, we talked about the skilled team that we have. So if there's something you'd like to talk through with any of our team members, please shoot me an email. My email address is down there at the bottom, and I'll be happy to schedule a time with you and any of our consultants just to, kick around ideas you have, talk about virtual programming, talk about planning, talk about fundraising, whatever it might be. We're happy to set that up for you. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help in this time of need. So Deb and Erica, anything else you'd like to share?
The only other thing that I would add in closing is, as Erica said, don't be afraid to get started. Really have a bias for action and don't sit around a long time and think about it. Get a concept together, test it with some clients, or get a concept out there as a pilot and just do it.
Well said.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for this informative presentation, and thank you all for your time this morning to participate in this webinar. And again, just please reach out if you have questions or need additional information, and stay tuned. We'll make sure you have access to the presentation and the recording as well. Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.